Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. So in today's video we are looking at another watch from Nodus watches. This one is called the Sector Pilot and it is featured in a very extensive Sector series of watches. Now the Sector series is a very diverse range of watches on offer by Nodus. It features watches like divers, a sports GMT, a field watch, and of course this pilot watch that I have. Now this particular version is actually my favorite from this Sector range, and I've had this for well over a month, allowing me to really get to know this watch. Now let me start off with my problem that I have with Nodus watches. They offer the majority of their watches with the Seiko NH35 or NH34, but are priced at around the £500 mark, which in my opinion makes them very expensive for the movement that they're using, and it's been the one thing which has stopped me from buying their watches in the past. But, and this is a huge but, having this watch for well over a month, it has made me see it differently, and I believe on this particular series it may well be justified. This is such a complete, purpose-built pilot style watch with exceptionally well thought out design and features, and you really do begin to understand and justify that £500 price tag, and it really tells you what Nodus is all about. So let me give you a rundown of the specifications and dimensions. We start off with a stainless steel case, a flat top AR coated sapphire crystal with a domed underside, which means it gives you awesome visibility and at certain angles gives you quite a unique perspective due to that domed underside. You also get a very conservative water resistance rating of 100 meters, even though the watch uses a screw down crown and a screw down case back. But I get the feeling this watch is capable of more than this, but perhaps for design and style of watch, they kept it at 100 meters. You also get a friction bi-directional bezel with a countdown timer, and you have an option of either a steel bezel or a black DLC coated bezel. You have Swiss Super Luminova on the dial. You also have a stainless steel bracelet with the proprietary Node X clasp, which has a very unique on-the-fly adjustment system, which is incredible to use. Now in terms of colorways, you are limited to a black dial and a deep blue dial. My preference is this blue with the black DLC bezel. It's probably the best colorway in my opinion. Now dimensions wise, this watch is really well proportioned, coming in with a diameter of 38mm at the case, but 39mm at the bezel, a case thickness of 12.5mm, and an overall case length of 47mm. That only extends to 48mm when you factor in the links which are semi-female, if there is such a thing. Overall you get a very balanced and substantial weight of 150 grams, which on this watch it does really feel good in hand. So having this for well over a month, I felt the design of this watch is very modern, yet it's extremely practical. And now considering this, and then the choice of the movement they went for, I think it does make sense. There still is plenty of value within the actual watch for the price tag to be justified. If this was a much simpler watch, then I'd say the complete opposite. But let me show you some of the things which I think add that value and make this watch really stand out. The first thing is the choice of crystal, which I touched upon in the specifications. It really does help the dial stand out on wrist, and you do get some fascinating angles due to that domed underside of that sapphire crystal. Now the dial is very well constructed, sector style dial, but with some very unique elements like the chapter ring for example, which has cutouts at the 12, 3, 6 and 9. And you'll see the Nodus logo in place of the 12 o'clock marker just above the 12 Arabic numeral. Now due to this dial being a layered construction, you have the outer part of the dial, which is a circular disc, but it's been finished very beautifully. You have a brilliant technique of circular sunray brushing with a fume gradient pattern which changes according to the intensity of the light. The color is lovely and it's deep and you get lots of different hues, making this a very visually pleasing dial to look at. Now looking at the center of the dial, you get the asphalt-like texture, which if it had covered the whole dial, it's something I would have hated, but it works well with it just being in the center. You'll find the brand logo printed in the center just below the 12 o'clock Arabic, and below that they have incorporated the day-date complication perfectly well, still keeping the dial balanced and symmetrical. Similar design to that of a Hamilton, but you also get a partial day and a smaller date text. Now the date wheel is color matched and it's really well color matched, and if you look closer you'll see the cut out of the date is beveled, smooth edges giving it a very premium finish. Again, they could have made this dial a lot simpler, a lot more basic, but I do love all these features and it does point to value added work on the dial. Now the dial's legibility is something which also stands out and is something you really do notice. The obelisk style hands are solid white and the second hand has the arrow tip right at the end. It gives you that precise length on the handset you want, especially on pilot watches. You don't even need to see the watch face head on. The setup allows you to tell the time just in your peripherals. Now the BGW9 loom is solid, it's well applied and there's no patchiness, but because the numerals are printed, it does lack that punchy loom. Instead, you get a more toned down and consistent glow. Now the dive watch enthusiast within me wants every bezel to be clicky and rotate like a diver. So I was a bit bummed out when this one was friction, but it is practical and adequate for a pilot watch. It's also smooth and it's well built, just as good as the other elements. I like the DLC coating, and the grip for this bezel is very practical, and it also features 4 tiny screws on either end just to help secure that bezel to the case. It's very clean and crisp printing on the countdown markings, and to be honest, I was over the bezel not being clicky after a few days of use. Now moving on to the case, this is where it brings us that real modernized look to this watch. It has soft satin brushing on the sides, complete with double polished bevels, both on the top and on the underside of the case, which is kind of pointless due to that protruding case back, but it is appreciated that they have considered it. The top bevel is wide and highlights those lugs, and it gives them a much more defined look. Now the lugs are also quite detailed with horizontal brushing on the flat side, but polished inner bevels, making the lugs appear thinner and more defined. It really is a great look. Now let's go over to the bracelet. Solid H-ring bracelet, fully brushed with a good amount of articulation to the links. It has quick release bars, even with the addition of drilled lugs, and it also features screw-in links. Now I mentioned I wanted to see the proprietary Node X clasp when I reviewed the previous watch, the Nodus Avalon. It is a great clasp. I love the way they designed the on-the-fly adjustment. You have a little section with the Nodus branding, which when you press it allows you to release that ratchet extension. Now the button is spring-loaded, so it feels very smooth to use, no pulling down on the tab and yanking the extension. It is a very premium feeling feature. The clasp also features integrated pushers which are built into the clasp, giving it a streamlined look and feel. Softly brushed with polished bevels and brushed pushers. As I said, the bracelet is extremely practical and solid to wear, and the clasp adds a very techie feel to the watch. Overall, the watch does show a lot of design flair. Modern features in such an old style of watch. It's so well made, and as I said earlier, looking and understanding all these smaller details really helps you justify that £500 price tag. And then you don't mind the use of the Seiko NH35, because ultimately the Seiko NH35 is one of the best movements you can use. The design elements are solid and amazing to see and really well executed. So that's it from me today. Let me know your thoughts below, guys. Thanks for watching as always, and I will see you on the next video.